The real Mulan isn't Chinese, and I'm going to explain to you why. Here is a quick primer. The ancient classical Chinese story of Mulan was introduced to the rest of the world in 1998 through the Disney animated film of the same name. In the movie's setting, China was invaded by the Huns, and to defend against them, the Emperor of China conscripts one man from each family to join the army. But since Mulan's father was too old to fight, the plucky Mulan cross-dresses as a man and joined the army in his stead. Thus hijinks ensued, and it all culminates into the sexual confusion and the eventual relief of one poor Captain Li Shang. And somewhere along the way, they defeated the Huns. Disney. If you look at the plot, themes and imagery, everything in the movie looked unmistakably Chinese, right? So it is perfectly normal for anyone who watches the film to think that Mulan is Chinese. But the fact is, she is almost certainly not. I am talking about the original Mulan, of course, not the Disney version. So, if she is not Chinese, then what is she?
Hola.
Nope.
Namaste.
No.
Bonjour.
Not even close. Before I give you the answer, here is another shocker for those of you who are unfamiliar with the source material. Mulan is not real. Or at least the chance of her existing is very slim, since there are no historical records of her, and the earliest writing featuring her is a ballad called the Ballad of Mulan. It is just a poem. All subsequent depictions of her are from novels, songs, and plays from later dynasties. These are practically ancient fanfictions. Look, I'm not going to go by the cheap route and say that Mulan is not Chinese because she is a fictional character. What I am saying is that the character Mulan, as she was originally imagined in the Ballad of Mulan itself, was not Chinese. This Ballad of Mulan can be found in the collected works of the Music Bureau, which was compiled by Guo Maoqian in the 12th century CE. But he said that it was actually derived from an older source from the 6th century CE, musical records of old and new, which is now lost to history. By analyzing the sequence of geographical features she traverses in a ballad, the Yellow River, Black Mountain, and Yan Mountain, historians were able to determine that the setting of the poem is the Northern Wei dynasty, which lasted from 386 to 534 CE. The Northern Wei dynasty fought the Rouran Khaganate regularly, and in 429, Wei dealt a massive blow to the Rourans in the location mentioned in the poem. So it was concluded by historians that the Battle of 429 was the inspiration for Mulan's setting. But the dead giveaway here is the poem addressing the ruler of the land as Khan or Khan instead of emperor. Now, why would the writer of the poem do that? Well, the fact is, the Northern Wei dynasty is not a Han Chinese dynasty. It was established by the Turkic Proto-Mongol Toba clan, which conquered northern China in 386 CE. The Toba is a powerful clan that descended from the nomadic Turkic Xianbei people, who used to roam the Eurasian steppes to the north of China. Not only that, they have different culture from the Han Chinese. Ancient depictions of them also suggest that they most likely have Eurasian features too. If you compare it to the Han Dynasty depiction of the Han Chinese themselves, you can see a stark difference in the facial features. Interestingly enough, their main rival, the Rourans, were also Xianbei people. The Xianbei were split into a few different clans and groups, and among them are the Tobas and Rourans. So it was more like a war between very distant cousins instead of the Chinese versus the Huns, like in the Disney animated movie. In the future, these tribes will become part of the Mongols. But that's a story for another time. Oh, but wait a minute. Some of you might be thinking that just because the Toba rulers of Northern Wei are Xianbei, it doesn't necessarily mean that Mulan herself is also Xianbei. Good point. Northern Wei used to be part of the Han Chinese Empire after all. So some of you might argue that she might just be an average Han Chinese girl whose family got conscripted to fight the Rourans. Well, that's possible, but here's the counter-argument. The Xianbei preferred to use their own troops in war rather than completely relying on the Chinese conscript. Obviously, since arming the population they rule over is a recipe for disaster. Historically, they did use Han Chinese as infantrymen. But for cavalry, they preferred to use their own. An important part of the poem is Mulan buying a horse and riding it to the battleground, so she is part of the cavalry, thus increasing the odds that she is of Xianbei descent. Additionally, in the ballad, Mulan's father is most likely a war hero, or at least someone who is very important to the Qin Dynasty, because he received 12 summons to war. That's a lot of summons for a nobody. Your average low-class warrior would have been executed before they could get this many. So, to be this trusted by the army, it means that Mulan's father is almost certainly a trusted Xianbei warrior. And following that logic, so is Mulan. Even the awkwardly named Ming Dynasty play, the female Mulan joins the army in place of her father, the most popular version of the story, acknowledges the Xianbei Northern Wei setting. In a novel written later in the Qin Dynasty, historical romances of the Sui and Tang, they even flat out depicted Mulan as half Chinese with Xianbei father. But they moved the timeline and made other changes to fit the political narrative. The reason for that is actually quite interesting, but I will cover it in the future once the live-action movie is released. At the same time, it is very important to note that something very interesting was happening to Northern Wei. Hey, come on, farm! Rebel? No, not rebel, farm! Rebel? No! Wait here. Oh look, it's me, a Chinese emperor, son of heaven! Greetings to you, loyal peasant! You know, it would be really swell if you do your emperor is solid and farm for me, yeah? Okay. Well, I guess I'm Chinese now. Yep, the Tuoba underwent self-imposed sanitization. This happened so many times in Chinese history, it's ridiculous. Invaders coming to China almost always end up adopting Chinese culture. It is just less hassle that way. This happened to the Xianbei, Manchus, and even Mongols to varying degrees. Sorry, John Green, the Mongols are the exception this time. The Tuoba nobles were very proactive in adopting Chinese customs. This is very evident since they called their dynasty Northern Wei, a Chinese dynastic name, and the royals even adopted the Chinese surname Yuan. They also implemented Chinese government systems and even encouraged intermarriage with the Han Chinese population. To be fair, not all the Xianbeis liked where the country was going. So in 535 CE, the traditionalist Xianbeis revolted and split into Western Wei. The Sinicized Xianbei, meanwhile, continued assimilating as they kept the eastern part of the realm, which they called, yep, you guessed it, Eastern Wei. Don't you just love practical naming scheme? So there is some possibility that Mulan is part Han Chinese through her mother's side, but the push for Sanitization were only more aggressively implemented much later during Emperor Xiaowen's reign, in 471. That's over 40 years after the war with the Rourans Mulan was involved in. So it kind of reduces that possibility. To be fair though, there just isn't enough information about Mulan's mother in the original ballad. So we can't really say whether Mulan is half Chinese or not. On another note, the Han Chinese identity itself is a very interesting one, because throughout the history of Chinese civilization, there has been ridiculous amount of intermixing. Xianbeis and other steppe people intermix with Northern Chinese. The Cantonese-speaking Yue people from southern China are the result of the Han Chinese migrating south and intermixing with the Baiyue people. The Xiang Chinese is intermixed with the Nanman, and so on. But now they are all classified as Han, even though they have different customs and dialects. Some dialects are so different, they can almost be classified as a different language altogether. Genetic studies have also shown that the genetic differences between Northern and Southern Chinese can be as far apart as Northern Chinese to Koreans. So there isn't really a unifying genetic basis for the Han Chinese identity. For what it's worth, it seems that the Han Chinese identity is mostly a matter of self-identification and social acceptance. So let me leave you with a question. Since you now know that Mulan is more likely a Xianbei instead of Chinese, do you think that it undermines the narrative of the Mulan story? Comment below. Also, those of you watching who have Chinese ancestry, do you think that it matters that Mulan is not Han Chinese? We would also like to know your thoughts. Oh yeah, when Disney eventually releases the new live-action movie, I am going to evaluate the heck out of it for historical accuracy and how closely it follows the source material. The press release says that it is based on the original Ballad of Mulan itself. But to be honest, it doesn't look like it. I'm sure it's going to be an entertaining film, but I am still going to tear it apart for history. So, if you don't want to miss that, subscribe and press the bell button. In the meantime, if you want more content on warrior women from ancient China, you can check out our video on the Maiden of Yue, the first swordswoman in history. Anyway, stay cool, my bros.